You can say hello, but I don't need you to like.
What's up, guys? I'm going to be watching James Harden's workout, at least explained by his trainer. Obviously, James Harden is an NBA basketball player, so this is going to be the second. I believe this is the second installment of an athlete. Most of them are celebrities, actors, etc. But we are about to look at another athlete, and James Harden nonetheless. So obviously, whoosh, that's James Harden right there. So he's not like super big. He's not like super flashy when it comes to, basketball. It's not like he's dunking on people. He's, I want to say, those dark horse dunkers, those people that you don't expect and all of a sudden he just jams down your throat. So probably going to be interesting to see how that is. Now, I remember James Harden when he initially entered the league, a little smaller, obviously very, very thin, just like everyone else that enters the league, except like Zion or Shaq. But most guys, they're going to enter the league pretty thin. So I know they have to bulk up these guys, especially if they're going to be bumping and tossing with all of these other dudes, because James Harden will make his way to the rim, so he will make contact with people. So it'll be good just to see what his whole entire workout is. So for the most part, it's going to be fun. But first, obviously, if you want to check out the rest of the videos, the link is right up in there, all the other reaction videos. And of course, if you are new here, please hit the like button, subscribe button, and let your friends know about me. And final word before we get in here, again, note that while I'm an exercise professional, please note that everything that I say or do is just for entertainment, educational purposes only, and not exercise prescription. I wouldn't do any of this without consulting a physician or your own trainer, like a fitness professional in person. That'll probably be the best way for you to actually go forward in life. But anyway, I'm just some dude on the mic spitting out his thoughts, and we are about to react to this video. So, alright guys, let's get it.
What's up, guys? I'm Paul Favorites from PJF Performance. Over the last 4 years, my job has been getting James Harden ready in the off season. So he plays 82 plus games every year. We got to keep him durable, resilient, and healthy. But he's also competing for the MVP this year. So it's not just about health, it's also about explosiveness. It's about his movements on the court. So I'm going to take you through a typical workout. Let's do it.
Okay, first off, so this guy is legit. He has a huge social media following. Obviously, if you're in the sports performance world, you've kind of have run around this dude's content before. So he has his own podcast. I listened to a little bit of that. Obviously, big social media presence, Instagram, YouTube, etc. So for the most part, this dude's legit. This dude knows what he's talking about. So that just makes this all the more exciting.
I'm going to take you through one of his workouts. We're going to go through his dynamic warm-up. I'm going to show you the mobility drills that I do with him, the core activation and the full body stability. Then we're going to get into some good stuff, the more intense, higher intensity nervous system work. I got my trainer Cam. He's going to be demonstrating the exercises. Let's do it. So there's a couple different components of our warm-up. One, we're trying to increase our body heat. Two, we're trying to stretch out each major muscle group that we'll be training that day. Three, we got to get activated. And four, we got to warm up that nervous system. So we got to rev up that nervous system. So our first one, Cam is going to go into a skip. So
okay, before we get into it, just the sheer breaking down of the warm-up, because it's not just movement for the movement's sake. So if you recall, we talked about a little bit, but warm-up or your prep work can technically be broken down into the acronym RAMP. So RAMP is essentially raise, activate, mobilize, and potentiate. He basically just went over all of that, what they're planning on doing. Obviously, just get the whole blood flow rolling, working on muscle activation, core activation, etc. And then obviously mobility, some mobility drills just to get some movement in, dynamic movement. And then, of course, stimulating the nervous system. That's essentially what the potentiation is. You're just going to stimulate the nervous system so it is ready for whatever sort of high velocity, high power, high strength, whatever you're doing, the nervous system needs to be ready to facilitate.
High with the knees, he's pointing the toe up towards the head. He's slamming that ball of the foot into the floor, and that heel is not going to touch the ground. So our next one's gonna be our over-under. So you're gonna see Cam goes over with that left foot, and then under with that left foot. He is flipping the hips, so we want that hip rotation. Next one's gonna be our hamstring stretch. So he's just gonna point the toe up towards the head. You'll notice he's on his heel, that knee is straight, and he's just swiping the floor. His back is staying nice and flat. Our next one is gonna be our quad stretch with a lean. So he's gonna pull his heel up towards his hips, and then from there we're gonna add a lean. By getting the knee back behind his hip, he actually gets a little bit of a hip flexor stretch instead of just our traditional quad stretch. So 2 birds and 1 stone on this one. So our next one are the Frankenstein kicks. So this is just a dynamic hamstring stretch. So you'll notice that he's keeping the knee straight and he's kicking across, trying to get that leg nice and high. So this is a hamstring stretch, but now it's a little more dynamic and a little more elastic. So our next one is the adductor stretch, so the groin area. So he's gonna take 2 skips out and he's gonna go lateral, keeping that left leg straight as he goes to that right side. Most common strain in basketball and in many sports is that adductors. For our hip flexor stretch, we're still gonna go with a double lateral. So a little skip out, he's gonna land and he's gonna rotate towards that lead leg. So now we're getting that hip flexor nice and loose, and then he pops back into that skip. He's going both sides, so he's getting both hip flexors nice and warmed up. For our hip mobility deep squat, what we're gonna do is 3 high skips. So he's going high with the right, high with the left, high with the right, land, and deep squat. So we're challenging the hip mobility. Pretend like there's a fence. Get that foot all the way over the fence. Now on that landing, I want you to sit as low as you can. I wanna see your chest. I don't wanna see you collapse. So we're challenging that hip mobility and we're challenging the ankle mobility, one of the best combination mobility drills that we can add to our warm-ups.
All of them did exactly what they were supposed to do. You're gonna raise the heart rate, blood flow, etc. You're going to activate certain muscle groups, and you are obviously going to mobilize. So what he said was true. When we talk about groin, the adductors, we're talking about hamstrings, hip flexors. Yeah, very, very common muscles you will likely strain or some sort of pull in basketballs. All of those muscles essentially need to be really prepared, especially since any sort of dynamic movement that you are doing at a very high velocity, like running, jumping, cutting, their muscles are more susceptible to injury. So therefore you definitely need to be thoroughly warmed up. I don't necessarily need to break down every single exercise because they were all just obviously did exactly what they were supposed to do. Obviously a lot more in-depth than probably in a normal video with a celebrity. But I personally love working with athletes a lot because their training has to be very deliberate. Everything you do is deliberate. The movement you do, the way you do the movement is deliberate, etc. So for the most part, there's no like, this exercise would be better. There's no this exercise is a waste of time. It's really what exercises are going to facilitate your movement better. So, and you just kind of use them and then obviously do them very, very thoroughly.
Now for our quick line into the stick, he's gonna go over the line as fast as he can. Go ahead, Cam, over the line. And then when I say stick, he's gonna stick with that right leg. That's extremely important for basketball because when we're making cuts, first, we have to be on balance before we redirect all that force. That is the limiting factor to your explosiveness and your change of direction, is your full body stability. So this is our Euro step stability. It's so important to have that ability to not only Euro step and create separation, create distance, but we gotta be able to stabilize, otherwise we can't be on balance to finish the layup.
Okay, there were 2 things in there. One of them was essentially part of the warm-up. I'm going to classify it under the potentiation because the quick side shuffle and then the stick, that is going to demand a good amount of reaction time, especially if you're on a cue. Like, so if you're cueing someone to like stop or go or whatever, they have to be perceptive to that cue. Therefore, they are going to react to it. They're not just doing something out of just ordinary movement or protocol or whatever. They're waiting for the cue and they're going to react to it. That is potentiation in a way. We do this all the time in some sort of manner when I'm working with my athletes, whether it's a hand-eye coordination, whether it's a partner reaction, whether it's some sort of implement like a ball drop or something like that. There's some sort of reactional component so that we can get the nervous system going. They get a little bit of waking up after just whatever they were doing the rest of the day. But For the most part, obviously you're just going to stimulate the nervous system. The single leg balance is obviously super important as well, especially in some sport like basketball, because if you think about it, every sport really, you are running, jumping, all of the above, mostly on one leg. You're never really on both legs at the same time. So you are going to land on one leg, you are going to cut on one leg, etc. So basically, single leg stability is crucial. So when they did the Euro step stability, they also had a pulley attachment to it. Now this is obviously just going to create another kind of reactive component to it, more of a neuromuscular reaction. So basically that pulling is going to feel it and your body is going to have to accommodate for it. That's just a form of reactive feedback, and you can do that with a band, you can do that with a person, you can do that with literally anything, but a band obviously in this situation works perfect.
Okay, so we like to start every workout on a force plate test. So this shows me where his nervous system is at. If he's overtrained, his test is gonna be bad for the day, but I have his data for every day. So if he's jumping well and he's feeling good, then we know we can push forward with that intense workout. So he'll step on the force plates here. Ready, go. Boom, land nice and soft, good. And so now I can share the data with him. And so he put 4,000 newtons of force in the ground on the takeoff, and he landed with 2,100 newtons of force. So we want to actually decrease that landing and land softer. And so now I can give him that objective feedback, and he knows how he's jumping and landing. More importantly, I know if he's ready to go for this intense workout. Basketball is all about how you interact with the ground. So if I'm putting more force in the ground, I get further. On my jumps, if I put more force in the ground, I jump higher. Now, when you look at injury prevention, we want less force. So all injuries are happening on the lowering portion or on the landing. So I want high force on the jump, and then I want low force on the landing. Also, I can tell whether he's producing the force with the right or left leg. He had a 10% increase in his right leg on the jump and on the landing. So we actually want to focus on balancing the legs out for injury prevention reasons.
Okay, let's break down the entire thing. This is exactly why this dude is training James Harden. This is exactly why this is like someone you want to listen to, and this is someone you want to kind of pay attention to. They know exactly what they are doing. They know how to obviously facilitate training. They obviously know how to facilitate recovery, etc. They know how to modulate workouts dependent on either subjective or objective measurements. So obviously, subjective measure could be like, hey, how you feeling today? Are you feeling good? Do you feel like you slept enough? Etc. etc. Objective measurement is like, okay, let's actually calculate, let's actually measure exactly how much force you're producing, like where your nervous system is at. That's like brilliant. Obviously, the force plates are a little hard to come by. Not every gym and not every trainer is going to have those force plates just chilling around and whipping out the iPad and be like, all right, buddy, you produce like X amount of Newton forces. Like, oh, yeah, cool. Probably not, but it's good feedback. So whether you are doing an objective measurement like that, or you have a subjective measurement of some sort, like I literally just get verbal feedback from most of my athletes, and then I watch my athletes move. I can tell when they're having a good day. I can tell when they're not having a good day. So that's mainly the way I would use it, but personally, like, I don't really have force plates, so it would be nice though.
So for the Davinci Flank, he's gonna set up the cable at shoulder height. He's gonna step away from the cable machine. Now he's just gonna lift up this outside foot. So we're challenging the stability through this left hip, but this right oblique has to fire up. If this right oblique relaxes, he falls into what we call lateral flexion. And so we gotta keep the shoulders completely flat and the shoulders directly over the hips. So he's squeezing with that opposite oblique, and you gotta breathe. We gotta relax and find a way to brace the core at the same time. Great core exercise, great full body stability. When you look at basketball, we take a lot of hits to the side of the body. If James is driving here and he hits somebody, if he's weak, he goes into lateral flexion. If he's strong, he can maintain his posture and finish.
Okay. All we need is one exercise on the core activation to explain literally everything. People know about a plank, right? They know about the normal plank, they know about maybe dead bugs, side planks, etc. If you are an athlete, are you spending most of your time on the ground or are you standing up? That is the clear-cut prime example of exactly why we train athletes a certain way. You are standing up and you are combating forces all over the place, whether it's like someone else, whether it's the ground, whether it's yourself, your own momentum. Basically, you are standing up the entire time. So the Davinci Plank, some sort of standing paddle off carry or something like that, yeah, you're going to challenge the core in a lot more functional manner because you are an athlete and you're usually going to be upright. Now, I'm not saying planks and dead bugs are useless. They actually are a very good foundational core activation, whether you are just learning the fundamentals of actually how to breathe, how to stabilize those deep core muscles, then obviously it gets a little bit more dynamic as you get into the more upright stuff like the Davinci Plank. So, oh God, I'm just trying to process everything because like this is just already just phenomenal. This is like what we're not even like halfway through, and I'm just like, what, Lord, dude, oh my Lord.
All right, so now we have our weighted jumps. So we can do this with a trap bar, or if you don't have a trap bar, we could always just hold a dumbbell between our legs. There's a lot of different ways that we could add weight. So we're using the boxes because on the way down, he can allow that box to absorb the weight instead of sticking the landing and having his knees absorb all of that weight. So we're getting good explosive training, but it's a little bit less stress to the knees. This is a just jump mat. I'm calculating his vertical. I don't give him the amount of reps. I just say, you go, and as soon as he drops off by more than 10%, we stop the set. So right now, he just did 3 really good reps, but then on his 4th rep, he started getting tired, he dropped down. We stopped the set then and there, because right now, we're after that nervous system and we're after the fast twitch muscle fibers. The world has been doing this wrong forever. High rep jump training is not where it's at. It's all about explosive quality reps.
Okay, before we actually get into the actual thing, what he said was dead on when it comes to plyometric, when it comes to power-oriented exercises like med ball throws, sprints, jumps, etc. You want quality over quantity. I'm not trying to get fatigued. I'm not trying to get just sore or anything like that. I am trying to elicit the highest power output I can possibly do and replicate it over a series of reps or sets. If I am fatiguing out, like what he was saying, after the 4th one, we were like, all right, that was it, then recover. You want to elicit the same power output every single time, or at least what his margin was, 10%. That's a pretty good margin right there. So for the most part, it is hard to do this subjectively unless you are able to actually measure it like what he has. He has another mat. He has a force mat. So for the most part, in any case, you would just keep the reps low and the intensity high. So for the most part, you focus on power, you focus on speed, whatever it might be, and don't worry about the reps. Like I'll have some of my athletes do some jumps. I'm like, oh, just three, walk around, chill out, give it a second. Or the med ball throws, like, all right, as soon as you get tired, just stop. We don't need to force it or anything. No, we're good. So weighted jumps, obviously a good variation to something like a Olympic style lift. Obviously it just falls into that umbrella of power training, the kind of explosive movement. So basically this is how you're supposed to train. This is training right here. This is exactly how you train.
Okay, so weighted jumps. So what we're gonna do is set up in our deadlift position. So our knees are right over the toes, his hips are back, his back is nice and flat. Now from this position, he's jumping as high as he possibly can, and then he's gonna hit that landing. So get up, boom, good. We're calculating his vertical, that was 13.2. Boom, that's 16 inches, good, he's going up, we keep going. 16 inches, good. Let's see what you can get on this one. 4th rep, down to 14, we stop the set. All right, so we're getting into place here. We're gonna do this on a box for now, so he's gonna lay back. Notice how we're offset here. So by offsetting, now he's gotta fire up this glute and fire up this oblique in the core, and then he's going with the traditional one-arm bench press. All right, so this is your normal one-arm bench, it's just we're offset because now he has to really fire up that glute and this oblique. So yes, we're getting chest, yes, we're getting shoulder and tricep, but now we're firing up the core and that hip. When it comes to actually translating from the weight room to the court, we need that full body stability. Now, if you're a young athlete, we would probably go a traditional dumbbell bench press because you still got to build some general strength and some size. For athletes like James, they have that strength and size. Now it's all about being functional and being able to translate it from the weight room to the court. This is a great way to do that.
Okay, real quick. So I was wondering if he was going to touch on it, and he did. And I'm so thankful that he did because I was about to say something. So basically, anytime you see some of these like professional athletes or athletes that have been training for years, they're doing some sort of crazy exercise. For the most part, one arm and single leg and all the other stuff like that, phenomenal for athletes. But that doesn't mean we don't do bilateral movements. Bilateral is just the two dumbbell, it's the double squat, it's all of those movements that are fundamental for building strength. If you are a new athlete, I probably will have you doing some sort of push-up variation. I'll probably have you doing some sort of dumbbell bench press, some sort of floor press, some sort of incline dumbbell bench press. Most of my young volleyball girls, they're going to do either the dumbbell bench press, the incline dumbbell bench press, or they're going to do push-ups. That is the two fundamental strength. I'm like, hey, we just need to build strength, etc. We'll get to all this fancy stuff as soon as we've actually developed all the other stuff. So I'll have some athletes get to that after, I don't know, maybe a couple years or so. But for the most part, it is important that you do create general strength first with traditional movements, and then after that, you incorporate these instability, these balance components to these exercises in order to transfer a little bit more towards the court or field.
In basketball, single leg strength is everything. So we always say the game is played on one leg at a time, meaning when you're sliding, you have one leg on the ground at a given time. When I'm sprinting or cutting, I'm not cutting with both legs, I'm cutting with one leg on the ground. So from a performance enhancement and an injury prevention standpoint, we got to get very, very strong in that one leg stance. So for our rear foot elevated split squat, how we like to set it up, ankle directly underneath the knee. So with that stance, we're gonna get a good amount of that glute activation. So now he's just gonna grab the dumbbells. We're starting at 35 pounds, and from there, we're just standing straight up. 2 seconds on the way down, he's gonna tap that back knee to the pad and explode up nice and fast. So we're really training that stance leg. So that quad, that glute, and the hamstring are getting a lot of work. This is one of the best ways that we can train and really, truly overload that lower body.
Okay, rear foot elevated split squat, also known as the Bulgarian split squat. Pretty much a staple exercise when it comes to athletic training, when it comes to strength conditioning, because it is pure single leg strength. Now, there's obviously more single leg exercises, but this is perhaps the easiest one to coach, and it is perhaps the simplest one to load when you're trying to load on weight. So for the most part, gold standard when it comes to single leg strength.
Okay, so we're gonna go into an inverted row. So we're gonna use rings, but you could use a barbell if you would like to. So we're gonna elevate his feet to make it a little bit more difficult and get his body completely flat. We do not want the hips to sag. I gotta have him squeeze his glutes so he stays flat all the way through. And then we just go into a row. So he's pulling his chest all the way up towards those rings. So he's thinking about pulling from the torso, and what that does is we actually train those lats, we train the rhomboids, those muscles in between our shoulder blades. Back muscles are so important for our overall performance and our strength on the court. Now, basketball, we do wear a tank top year round, so we do need some biceps. This is one of the best ways to build biceps, probably even better than bicep curls. You always gotta have some sort of inverted row in your program.
Okay. Fair enough. So they are wearing jerseys, you do want lean arms, etc. If you are training the biceps, yes, any sort of pull-up variation, inverted row variation is going to do way more wonders than just simple bicep curls, especially in athletic sense where you're trying to produce more functional capacity in the upper body and the full body essentially.
So after an intense workout, we gotta get our recovery. So I'm gonna have him lay down on his back, and I'm just gonna bring his leg up 90 degrees, and then he's just going up and down with this other side. So notice we don't really do too much static stretching. I like to do it a little bit more dynamic even after the workout because that involves muscle contraction. And then the muscle acts as a pump So it pumps out all that lactic acid, all the bad stuff that we don't want, and it pumps in all the good nutrients so we can begin that repair process. Okay, so this one's more of a hip flexor where you're also gonna get some shoulder mobility. Hips forward, shoulders back so that hip flexor is nice and long, hands together, and then he just leans. So hands together, lean as far as we can towards that lead leg. He's stretching out that right hip flexor, and then he brings it back and back down. Notice he's big with the shoulders, so we're getting some shoulder mobility, some upper back mobility.
So the first two, obviously active stretching is way better in my opinion as well. Dynamic and active stretching is going to be way better than static stretching. I'm not saying you don't do static stretching. We'll do static stretching when we need to. But if you're just using stretching as a tool to recover, active stretching or some sort of dynamic movement is going to be way better just to do exactly what he said. You're going to flush out a little bit more lactic acid and you're going to get the muscles a little bit more of that kind of fine recovery, that movement.
All right, so for our 90-90 get-ups, I want him 90 degrees here, 90 degrees here, and then he's just gonna roll to one side, trying not to use his hands, and then he's just gonna come up to a half kneel position, back down, don't just fall down to the floor, control it back down, and then back to the other side. So we're getting some good internal, external rotation at the hip, so important for our mobility on the court. And as a cool down, we're starting to pump everything out of the glutes and we're getting some good movement. So even though most people would do this in a warm up, we actually like to do it in a cool down. He would do 3 to 5 repetitions on each side, just one set here. All right, for our last one, we're just gonna go kneeling ankle mobility. So he's gonna drive the knee as far as he can over that toe while he's keeping that heel down on the ground. So we're challenging that ankle mobility. He rocks it back and we go forward, hold for 2 seconds and rock back. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to our workout. Whether it's James Harden working out, trying to become the MVP, or just you trying to get to the next level and be the best version of you, we gotta work hard, we gotta work smart, we gotta work consistently.
All right, so the last portion of that was just a little bit more of dynamic stretching and movement. So again, the 90-90 stretch. Yeah, we do that for warm up all the time. Now, I'm going to explain why they're doing it in the cool down, why it is probably better, especially if you are a professional or collegiate athlete. If you just get done with a training session and you're gonna assume that you're gonna go to something else, whether it's like right after it or maybe later on in the day, whether it's shoot around, maybe it's practice, whatever it is, you want to stay relatively limber. So, but not like relaxed. So the active movement is going to keep everything relatively loose, everything really limber without getting in that relaxed state. That would make more sense why you have a 90-90 stretch like that, the Samson lunge, all those different dynamic movements just to facilitate more blood flow, accelerate recovery. So they have probably other recovery tools that they do, but I'm assuming they're doing that just because they're gonna go on to another thing, whether it's practice, etc. All right, guys, so obviously this is perhaps one of my favorite ones. This is like full on strength and conditioning. This is sports performance. This is exactly why I am in the field, because it is super fascinating. And when you're working with a very high level athlete like this, the training has to be very deliberate. Most of my athletes are youth athletes, so a lot of their training is pretty generalized, but some of them do move towards a little bit more of that sport specific functional training when it comes to sports performance. So for the most part, overall, it was just brilliant. I don't even have anything else to say. Dude knows what he's talking about, so I highly suggest you go check more of that out because he has good quality content on Instagram, YouTube, etc. So for the most part, I don't really have anything to say about that. It was just brilliant, and I'm a fan. I'm a fan. We do a lot of that with a lot of the athletes I train. No, for the most part, that was really refreshing. Actually, that was refreshing to see that because I love it. I love seeing it. And I love seeing that people are actually doing proper training. Now, obviously, it's for a professional basketball player, so I would assume there would have been proper training. Yeah, that was fun. All right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please hit the like button, subscribe button, and let your friends know about me. Until next time.